All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Marjorie Winters, and we have Susan Lucino, and we have the Toms, Tom Tabriski, Tom Hazel, and Tom Fitzgerald as staff members. We'll get started. So the minutes from the September 1st, 2021 meeting. Susan, did you see it? Whoops, sorry about that. Did you see anything?
You know what? I wish I wrote this down. I actually did see something. Can we come back to this?
We can table that, yeah.
And I'll see if I can find it in the meantime.
Sure, let's table that for the moment. And then the next issue is the draft PA 490 policy. And who'd like to, Tom Hazel, Tom, would you like to speak to that? Oh, you're muted.
I think we all understand what a PA 490 is. It's basically establishing you as a farm for tax purposes, and most towns will recognize you when you qualify for a PA 490. Haven't had a lot to look at, but it seems to, at a quick glance, it covers a lot of the bases that one would want. I know, Susan, you did a lot of research on this, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I went to a workshop and I have some notes on that. It applies to, it could be farmland, forest. There's actually a marine category that doesn't apply to Simsbury. Yeah. There's an open space category, which is what I believe we're talking about today, is do we want to add an open space category? My notes from the workshop that I attended show that there are about 30 towns do have an open space category. I didn't know this was coming up in Simsbury. I just happened to send the policy that I found, which I think is Windsor, or one of the Windsors was the kind of example policy. When we, in thinking about if we discussed it at one point, it seems to make sense that maybe a minimum of 3 acres would be a, reasonable size. I know that's the minimum you need, for example, to have a horse. And in looking over the language on the one that I think we're reviewing today, it's something about having twice the amount of land above and beyond the building envelope for that zoning or something like that. So there was no specific area listed, but I think it's consistent with the 3 acres that I was thinking of. So I wanted to kind of parse through that and see if that's your understanding as well.
From the zoning side of things, the way that we've run it under, our typical thought process has been, from what I've been told by Mike, has been you're allowed, I believe it's 2 horses on 3 acres. To get any more horses on your property, we were requiring 5 acres and a PA 490.
Okay. So
that was our cutoff point, was 5 acres.
Right. So this, okay. But that, you can get a PA 490 for like farming at 5 acres. So I didn't know if this open space, this is not specific to horses. I was using that as an example. So,
do we want, I think our big picture is, do we want something the size of 3 acres to be within an open space that at some point, while it's preserved as open space under a PA 490, change of sale, are we going to lose that if someone disqualifies themselves from the PA 490 and then develops everything? We're not going to own it, I would assume. Under a PA 490, it's still going to run with the ownership of the land.
Right. So I'm just looking at what is kind of proposed for Simsbury, and it doesn't specify a specific acreage.
Mm-hmm.
It says it must be twice the minimum required lot size for the use in that zoning district.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a zone R20, just to double the size? Would the extra land be, we're not talking a large,
Yeah, I think our buildable lots, like if a 15 is really tiny, a 20 goes up, and then when you get to the R40s and 50s, you're getting into acreage.
yeah. So
Everything
when
else
they,
is like 20,000 square feet or something like that.
so when this policy that's before us, when it says just double the lot size, are we still talking about this R15s and R20s?
It would have to apply to all zones if we were if it met the criteria. So if you're an R15 and you only had to have 10,000 square feet, you're just getting 10,000 square feet of open space if that rule applies. That's tiny. It's a postage stamp.
And does it talk about the usage of this for an open space? I mean, is this a landscape lawn or is this a?
And does it have to meet our criteria that we have for open space? Considering it runs with the landowner, does it necessarily? I mean, it kind of ties it up, but it only ties it up for a short period of time. And it's just for their tax purposes is what I'm saying. So if someone in an R15 happens to have a double lot size, we're going to lose the tax base on 10,000 square feet. Are they really going to go for that savings? It's got to be nominal at that point. I think we should really think about the sizing, and rather than say double the size in a zone, considering we have zones everywhere from 10,000 square feet up to 3 acres, maybe either push it into zones where it's a little bit more advantageous, I guess. But then does it have to meet criteria of connectivity, of habitat? Like you said, could it just be lawn? You know, not to just because it's Steve Antonio, but it's kind of fun. He had open space that had always been used as lawn. It just always was that way when the whole place was developed. So was it really open space? You know, did it really meet any criteria? And I think that's why when the town looked at trying to put in the pathway, it was an easy thing to say, well, you know, it's kind of a residential use already. Is it really a beneficial piece of open space?
The other thing is, if someone did sell, if they had a double lot and they did sell that other lot, did they have to pay back to,
They probably would not. All the taxes would have been saved for all those years, and then they can still disqualify.
there's no,
I mean,
because I know in I think Cape Cod, if you sell your land that you've been saying is farming land, you
Yeah,
have to pay the back taxes for 10 years. The difference
yeah, there is a penalty. There
yeah,
is
we'd
a
have to see
penalty.
what the state law says on that, because I think, isn't there a state law driver behind a PA 490?
Yeah, I think it's a 10-year thing, and then you have a penalty. So I guess I can see it both ways. Like even a small piece could have a lot of environmental value, you know, depending on what it is. So and I know this is kind of time sensitive, right? I mean, I think we want to kind of like get this done, I believe, because there's some things coming up. That was my understanding. That's why it kind of came on to our agenda. So I wonder if we could say, you know, minimum 3 acres or meets the criteria for open space.
As long as you have a double lot. Or
Acquisition, yeah, has the criteria that's written in here, subject to whatever review according to criteria for open space acquisition or 3 acres. So it could be like an either or kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'd like to see what Francine has to say from an assessor standpoint, as far as what it means for them and what the value to the property owner is. I mean, most of the coming from Windsor, we had PA 490s quite often, and a lot of times that was agricultural lands.
Yeah.
Someone buys a huge parcel, they plan to live in a house on the parcel, but they're going to become a farmer and they want to turn the soil into an agricultural use. They would get themselves established and do a PA 490 to lower their taxes, as long as that, like you said, actively farm for 10 years or you pay a penalty. I don't remember a lot of it happening in residential zones because I don't think they had that open space criteria that much. They may have, but I never saw it used for that. It was always like some form of agriculture or serviculture. And the serviculture wasn't even that big because Windsor typically was ag heavy, and serviculture, just there wasn't a lot of value in log lots out there. We did do a little bit of that in Wyndham, where they had more logging activities, and there were some areas where they had large parcels that were mainly for timber or firewood, and they would put those into a PA 490.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the main ones that I've dealt with. I just have not seen the open space criteria on a PA 490 before, or at least dealt with it. Francine, from an assessor standpoint, will know the standard operating procedures. I would understand. I would think from a assessor side, because that's who I always relied on in both Wyndham and Windsor, was the assessor with the PA 490.
Right. I mean, like I said, I mean, I know from the notes I went to on the workshop, which was done by the Farm Bureau, they said that 30 towns do have this, and it could also be, like potential ag land that isn't currently in, being used for ag. Could be like pollinator pathway areas, to try and put that kind of stuff on the landscape. So I think there's a lot of benefits to kind of thinking this through carefully. And anyway, so my opinion is we could say 3 acres or meets criteria for open space acquisition, according to what's written there that says like the double lot, the twice as much is the zoning or something.
All right, I took some notes on that. I think that'll be that sounds pretty reasonable, I would think. I mean, PA 490 should be held to a pretty high bar, just because this is for tax relief and it has its effects on the town, and it is a process that does use town resources to evaluate and everything else. So I don't think it's a high bar, super high or discouraging bar to meet. I think it's fairly reasonable, and I'd like to see what Francine says about that side of it.
Yeah, I'm looking, it says that in the 2016 grand list, there were 84 parcels used for farming, but only 12 of them had at least 25 acres. So are a lot of them just, I'm trying to figure where these farms are.
Oh, we're pretty, I mean, even the ones we lease, like Dewey Farm, that's only like 6 acres.
6 acres, okay.
So
there's a lot of small farm proproperties.
But the ones that we lease, they don't have 490s because they
because they're town owned. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I mean, we make use of small postage.
But there are a
stamps
lot
as
of farms of a couple of acres. Dewey, yeah, all right.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think someone in an R15 is going to be farming, because you're so tightly surrounded. So this gives them the opportunity with the open space, but it also sets a goal that we need to make sure that open space is worth giving the tax relief to.
Because just having 3 acres, if they've got a 6 acre lot and 3 of those acres are mowed.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to put my bottom acre right out the window and do a PA 490, quite frankly. But and I abut a town preserve of 397 acres. But at the same time, I brush mow it once a year just so we could go sledding in the winter time. But is it worth me putting it in there and then possibly getting a penalty if I don't meet the 10-year mark?
And how does the PA for open space, how would that differ from tax-wise from a conservation easement?
Conservation easement would be permanent.
Okay, but there wouldn't be any. You reduce taxes on a conservation easement.
I believe there is some. I can't speak to that. I'd have to ask Colleen in tax.
Because if the interest is in keeping this an open space, I would think the conservation easement might be a better way to go.
But you would have
for something like an
easement.
If like an R15, it makes kind of more sense, but the person may want to angle it so that they can use it later.
Right.
And when the conservation ties it up in perpetuity.
So if we could check out to see if there's any tax penalty for later use.
There is.
There is.
There 100% is. The 490 is a temporary.
Okay.
It's like a temporary conservation easement where you still pay taxes, but you pay reduced taxes.
Okay.
So
there is. So after 10 years, you pay back at the rate that you would have.
If you were in a PA 490.
Yeah.
Right. Only if you pull it out of it. If you
Yep.
pull it out of it, you can renew it. So it could be like a rolling, thing like a farm if you want to keep it in open space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, farmers have a lot of options, and a lot of times when they want to go to even further, say if you get into the buying of development rights.
Yeah. But most of these little pieces, I mean, this is how we can kind of pick up little connectors and things like that for habitat and stuff like that. these pieces are not going to be something that the land trust is going to go after and pay for a conservation easement on.
Yeah.
Just
No, and even if
go
it's
around
temporary,
and
even if
look
it's
at this stuff.
temporary, it has some benefit to it.
Right, exactly.
But we'd have to hold our criteria. I think our open space criteria is pretty good. So I would hope that, we can tackle that through
Yeah.
that process.
Yeah,
So it would
exactly.
so if it was going to be an open space PA 490, it would get a referral from the open space committee that it meets the criteria, and then it
Okay.
goes to the assessor and gets processed.
Okay.
Right.
That sounds good.
So my suggestion though, is that we would only trigger that if it was less than 3 acres.
Correct. I think that's a good bar. I think that's a
Right.
fair bar.
Okay.
Because I think 99% of the people who are going to look at this are going to be people who want to do ag in some respect.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think many people up in Tariffville are even familiar with a PA 490.
Right. Yeah, ag, or maybe people want to like invest in like a pollinator pathway kind of program or something like that.
Yep.
You don't meet the bar for the 5 acres for farming or something.
And if we coordinate with the pollinator group, to have it as an educational piece, and they're, if they do a trifold or something, it could be part of that informational.
Yeah, I'm just thinking long term. What happens if they start off, they're doing it, they got the 490 for a pollinator pathway, they put in the garden. After a few years, nobody,
They get elderly
they
or
don't want to do it
something.
anymore, and they mow it all down, and it becomes lawn.
It would have to go at the revaluation. When we do a reval would be when we probably caught that, because we don't have enough staff to police it. It'd have to be listed on the assessor's card. They go out for a reval. One of their criteria would be to check that it's still an active use as a pollinator pathway.
Yeah, that's fair.
But unfortunately, how often do we do reevaluations? 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, at least it had some benefit for a while.
Yeah, and that's what I want to see from Francine. What is actually the savings that they're getting? Because it just might not be, like I was saying, it's not very appetizing for me to do it for my bottom acre, because it just doesn't. I was even looking at growing Christmas trees and trying to get, into being a quote unquote farm. And it was just like, it still doesn't meet the bar. It's too much work, and the tax savings just wasn't enough.
Okay, so do we have enough to forward our comments to?
I think so.
I think, the Board of Selectmen's looked at it. Have they, I think?
Yeah, well, I thought Francine was supposed to talk to us somewhat at the committee, but we could forward this to the committee. Hopefully we could have Francine in the room and we could have a good educated discussion about it.
Okay. Sounds good. So that's enough of that. We don't have to vote on anything.
No, this is just work group to shove stuff down to the committee at a good
All right.
level.
So the next item on the agenda is the model agricultural practices. Did we, I think there were going to be some changes, or looks like the same document. Did the lawyer look at the issue about the lease and the?
I don't know if the lawyer has gotten a chance to get that. Maria had me make the changes in the RFP. I know that, and that's supposed to get for licensor or leasee language.
Yes.
I read I'm working with Tim Ryan over at the Dewey Farm. He runs the flower farm over there. And I was reading through his ground lease agreements, and the language of licensee and leaseor, it's all over the place. Not being a lawyer, I couldn't parse out what the logic was, but I'm sure Bob would have some understanding of why that is that way.
Okay. So
But I'm still trying to find the model ag. So where is that in my packet?
Yeah, I thought we kind of had that buttoned up.
I thought so too. I thought we voted on it. I think, didn't we?
The RFP is all set. It's just waiting
so
on Bob. I don't know why that was back in the
I don't know
packet.
why this is on the agenda.
But the
Okay, well, let's go to the draft open space acquisition policy.
well, we're just stuck with locking it up and throwing away the key, or allowing it to actually have soccer fields on it.
I was thinking about that, Tom. I know you're concerned about, what people might want to use these areas for in the future, but a lot of them are restricted by how they were funded in the first place.
And sometimes if the town just acquires it, the town should have the right to do what they want with it. But if we end up,
But even when the town's purchasing, such as Meadowwood, they've been purchased with all sorts of grants, with limitations on future use for that
but
property.
not everything's going to fit that cookie cutter.
No.
And we're going to have to work around that. To just say any open space acquisition is to be left alone, we can't do
No,
that.
I think that goes before the voters and whenever the town is going to be purchasing something in the future, it's going to be purchasing for a particular purpose. And it'll be up to we'll be, stuck with how we're going to pay for it. And often it's done through grants, and that tends to restrict things one way or the other.
I'm just not wanting to hammer. I've been through this particular mindset before with my conservation commission in Windsor. Everything had to be natural, but it's not a reality. We have to look at the grand picture, because if we do pick up something and it's affordable, we have a budget surplus. When we purchase it as open space, the definition of our open space can't be natural.
No, I don't think that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying.
Oh, I think that's what Helen was saying, and that was my.
No, Tom, you're misunderstanding what Helen was saying. Helen somehow misunderstood that there's some land that we have for culture, parks, and rec, and there's other land that we have for open space. And that is her misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, all called open space.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. There's actually no disagreement. She was thinking that if you purchase it for culture, parks, and rec, then that's where you would have the soccer fields. If you purchase it for open space, then it wouldn't be soccer fields. But there's only one big bucket.
Yes.
You have to decide what is used for what.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree we have to be flexible, but there are some things like headwaters and stream buffers and stuff like that we, that's why we did the natural stewardship policy. Is there
Mm-hmm.
some places that we really should protect as natural areas? And I don't think there's any disagreement on that either. I think it was just a misunderstanding about culture, parks, and recs versus open space.
As long as
I think going forward, when we do acquire a piece, it's going to have a reason for acquiring.
Mm-hmm.
It's either going to be, we need more soccer fields, and the town it'll go up for budget referendum that we're buying these for X, Y, or Z, or we're buying it to protect the headwaters of, in the aquifer areas. So it's going to be.
My concern,
even 30 years in the future, we're still using the evaluation tools that we have to us at the time to decide whether a piece of land is appropriate for, whatever it is.
Schultz Park is open space, and it's never been turned into the park plan that was proposed in the 70s, but we can still do that. But my concern was that she was wanting to change the language in the criteria document, or in that document, to make it locked up, because she was having issues with the language in the document. And the language in the document is just saying that open space can meet all these different criteria, as we've been discussing all along. And then all of a sudden it was like, I have issues with all this language that says it can be used for a recreational purpose. Yeah. And that's got to kind of be in there, because it is, like you said, it is all one bucket. And I know she's not grasping that, but to change the language in the document, now someone could go, you got this as open space, but Parks and Rec is going to put some basketball courts and some soccer fields under your acquisition. You can't do that. Well, and that's where I'm concerned.
Yeah, I can understand your concern, but I think a lot of those concerns are alleviated by the fact that when we purchase, regardless in the future, or what, the properties we purchased in the past have restrictions on them because of how we purchased them. But if we want to go forward and purchase something in the future, we might seek grants that will restrict us, or we might just buy it whole, and then there are no restrictions on it. So it depends on how you approach the voters and how the properties are funded.
I'll let the committee hash it out. I mean, honestly, I don't live in Simsbury. I just know that I've hit a roadblock with this before that got dangerously close to locking up everything that we ever touched. So
but that's when we go forward and make an acquisition, it's going to be for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how we fund it will determine how locked up it is. Like Meadowwood, I mean, it's for farming. We've got a farm grant. We've got the historical. I mean, there are things that lock it up right now because that's what it is. That's where our funding came from, and the voters. So there we go. Anyway,
So can we back up a tiny bit? Did anyone read the email that I sent like
yes,
a time ago and then resent it?
yes.
I think that's sort of pertinent to this introductory paragraph that we're like hashing out right now, because I honestly think that language that we're getting stuck on doesn't even need to be in that introductory paragraph because it's all laid out below. We need more kind of visionary conceptual language that just kind of lays out the main things, because we have all the details in our 15 points. So anyway, I wanted to also acknowledge that Francine joined, so I didn't know if we should
Back up.
back up
Let's
even further. to
My
our first topic,
apologies.
because
My,
maybe Francine
my
could-
apologies. I was waiting since 3:59 and they kept saying waiting to be,
Oh,
accepted
no.
in the meeting. And then finally I'm like, I gotta go look for someone because this is just not working. So my
Dear.
apologies.
No, not your problem. So let's go back to the draft PA 490 policy. So we were discussing the impact of the town if double lots, one of the lots could be put under the 490 if it's used for open space or farming or whatever. Tom, you had some.
Yeah, Francine, what I was wondering is because for our open space, we were looking at in the beginning double lots, but as you know, like we have R15s and R20s and R30s, R40s, and like R15s are little postage stamps. And if someone has a lot double the size, what are they actually saving, on a 10,000 square foot postage stamp that they lock up in open space? Do you think there's a motivation in savings to do that? Or do you think it's going to be triggered more on someone who's got a 10-acre lot and an R40 and all they need is 3 acres so they can, put some aside and actually get a larger chunk of savings than just a little 10,000 square foot?
Yeah. So like you said, again, the open space classification under that Public Act 490 is for tax purposes, right? It's to save, land. And when I say double lot, double the size, is because someone has a lot that only requires 1/4 of an acre for housing, but they have 1/2 an acre. There's the potential for them to be able to subdivide that lot and sell one for, someone else, as long as it's buildable. So that's why I say, depending on the zone, whatever zone it is, the classification, double the acreage. So if the town wants to preserve land and provide an owner of a property that has double the size, that where they could go and have it subdivided or split to sell it off, in order to save on, because if it is buildable, it will be assessed as such that, it will be higher than not just necessarily, excess acreage. So, and then depending on it has to be classified in your planning.
I see. I totally missed the fact that, when it's a buildable lot, you are assessed at a much higher rate than if it's just a landlocked piece that doesn't have any frontage.
Exactly. So, and then most towns typically, once they do approve that classification, because it is by ordinance, unlike forest and farming, which we have to provide no matter what, as long as they qualify. Open space is only by ordinance, so not all towns have that. However, for some reason, we do have some classified like that. So the town either needs to adopt it, clarify, do something, and get some language in there to approve this, if that's what the town wants to do. So typically there is a savings, and the majority of the time it's 25% of what excess acreage would be if it wasn't classified as, in PA 490.
So there's some.
So there is a
desire
savings, yes.
Now that she says it that way, I'm kind of rethinking what we were talking about.
How so?
Well, because we were saying, for open space, it would be 3 acres or double the lot size that meets open space criteria. But do they necessarily have to, do we want to make them have to make sure that it's valuable open space because they are looking at 25% tax savings for that land? I mean, that's reasonable. I mean, that's just a reasonable motivation alone. And I don't want to tell someone like in Terriffill, because you're not connected to anything, but it's a buildable lot, you can't do it because it's not meeting our quote unquote criteria.
So again, it has to be designated in your plan also within that area. So if someone came to me as the assessor and said, I wanted to classify my excess acreage in open space if it was adopted, I would then have to go take a look at the map and figure out, is it first of all within, a designated area that they can first? Second, is the size within what the criteria have been approved for? Check. And then we go on for the approval process.
So what are our designated areas? I think we need to back up one step because we have designated areas.
I'm trying to flip through the POCD.
So in the POCD, when I look at it, because you do talk about it, yes. Now, would you, the areas that you designated in there as managed open space, is that what you're?
I'm looking at the managed open space, and that tends to be what we already have. I don't know where the desired open space is, because there would have to be
Can you clarify the managed open space for me, please?
Well, let me see if I can look up the definition of that in here. Oh, come on. Couldn't make this any more convoluted. Come on, right. Well, I'm not seeing a sidebar with any definition of what their managed open space is. I could see where it is.
Yes,
and I think a lot of that is the golf course. Because let me see, we come off of here. Yeah, that's the golf course is managed open space under this one. And then there's a little bit that's associated with Chris Nelson's division off of Strattonbrook has managed open space in it as well. And then we got down at the golf course at the south end of town off of Nod Road was managed open space, and some lots behind that are managed open space. But that seems to be mainly golf course or subdivision open space that will be tended to.
Okay, so it's not referring to when they were talking in the POCD about PA 490, because they talk about it, but yet, of course, like we say, it wasn't.
Yeah, I would love to see something that says desired open space, because that would help.
Designated.
Yeah, but if we had a desired, like you could easily say, oh, you're on that property and you want to do this as open space. We already know we are desiring it. So that's a home run for you. But
yeah, or we already know like where are the wildlife corridors and, migratory bird stuff or something like that.
Connectivity.
Connectivity, something like that. So I didn't know there was that additional criteria, because if there is, we need to lay out some criteria for that before we adopt this.
Yeah, so it needs to be designated in the POCD.
Or we could go with what we were talking about before you joined, Francine, was have it be 3 acres or meeting the criteria for open space acquisition, which is the 15-point plan that we've been working on for a while. So if it's less than that, it would be like referred to open space for review. Would that?
No, that's because this is totally different. This is for assessment purposes. And so once they do qualify, they're in a 10-year penalty period.
Well, no, that's what I mean. That would be one of the qualifying. That would be one of the. Those are already rules for set by the state if you adopt. No, what we were saying is that we have a model that we could possibly pass today, which was just talks about the lot size. And we were saying that, maybe we should, well, I don't know. We were talking about making it 3 acres or subject to like review by open space. And then it would qualify. Those would be the qualifiers.
I think what Francine's saying is we don't really have that authority.
No.
Because of the way the PA 490 is set up, it's an assessor thing. So we wouldn't have
Mhm.
authority for review and recommendation.
So the only thing that you need to do, what you do need though, is it needs to be areas designated in the plan and the POCD.
Okay, so this is a
Okay.
POCD issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So
Yeah, we don't
That's gonna
have
be-
that.
So it's going to be planning.
Yeah, I also have a question from a planning point of view. Do we really want the smaller lots are also going to be in a denser area, a denser development area? Do we really want to discourage people from infilling in those areas and going to other areas, building new in a bigger area? Or do we want to keep the development in more confined areas?
I actually like I said, I was kind of waffling backwards on that. I think like in a Terrafill, anybody who wants to do the open space on the double lot size, it's a benefit to everybody around that lot
Okay.
because of the density. I mean, you're talking like we're not urban, but it's just a little bit of easement in there. Tree can grow. You get a little shading,
Yeah.
something like that. I think it has its benefits, and that's why I'm kind of waffling back. I kind of like that. If you have a double your lot size thing, even in a dense area, it has benefits to it and to the residents.
I mean, if you put it a general term that anywhere within the town, if you have double the, if that's something you want to think that it might be a good thing, and it's anywhere within the town, that's the language. You have double the size within your zone. And you want to preserve, that's one of the criterias, then you don't need to have like specific spots designated in the POCD. You just have to have that language in there as one of the criterias.
You're convincing me with every sentence you say, Francine. I'm getting what you're pointing
I mean,
at.
it could
Yeah.
then
It'd be
be, it
simple.
could then be modified later on. I mean, if
I mean, if the
need
POCD
be.
is a driver and we have an issue, that's easy to change for the
Mhm.
planning commission.
All right.
So, Francine, what you're saying is that this open space for a PA 490 needs to be spelled out under the open space section of the POCD.
Yes, I mean, there was already language in there and it referenced to continue the PA 490 assessment, but then it talks about only 25 acres.
Oh, okay.
Review the criteria for the PA 490 on page 54.
Page 54.
There was a note, review the criteria for the PA 490 open space assessment category to evaluate whether to extend incentive to residentially zoned parcels less than 25 acres in size.
Got it. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Yep, because that's this is our. I'll just show everybody. I don't have it digitally, but so we had our red writing in there, and that was what they were trying to work on, but it hasn't been parsed out. So I think this will take that off the plate for them. But page 54.
That was the page we were sent in our packages.
Yeah, C1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'm getting more handle on what's going on here and what the moving parts are. And I think that if we do the double the lot size, it makes it available to more people and gets more land that is developable held off for possibly a 10-year period. So it gives a nice buffer of time.
Yeah, I mean, so once someone classifies and they get approved, so yes, they're penalized. They have a penalty period that lasts 10 years from that assessment date, the original classification date. If they sell it within that 10-year period, there's a penalty and it decreases year over year, okay? After the 10-year, or if they split it and sell it off, that portion, they get penalized on that portion. after 10 years, they can keep it that way. They can sell it off. There's no penalty after the 10-year initial.
Well, that's a good period of time, though. You think about locking something up that long.
It's only 10 years.
They still get the tax benefit, but there's no
Yes.
penalty after 10 years.
Exactly.
So the 11th year or 12th year or 13th year, 20th year, they can move it. Yep.
Huh.
It's an incentive.
I would take 10
know,
years
to-
over no time,
Well, I mean, it's also, I mean, I see it two ways. It's a benefit to the environment and it's a benefit to the homeowner if they want to do that. But I mean, Marjorie, that's where it's quite different than a conservation easement.
No, well, that would be the only way to really lock it up. But I'm curious about this. It decreases the penalty decreases after 10 years because why? I mean, if you own this property for 20 years, you've enjoyed the benefits of low taxes on it for 20 years.
You only get penalized.
Pay back at least 10 years of it. I think that's how that works in
a lot of the tax
farmland.
tax stuff in Connecticut scales. Like if you're a contractor and you got your value of tools, every year it goes down until you reach zero.
No, I can understand depreciation, but I don't understand you haven't depreciated the value of that tax benefit. It should be that, if 20 years down the line you want to sell it, you pay 10 years back taxes.
That's the guideline. That's the state regulations.
What I was
and
about
it's
to
the
say.
same thing.
Which makes no sense to me.
You got to go talk to the Capitol.
I'm familiar with I'm familiar with how they do it in Cape Cod to protect farmland, and that's so anytime you want to sell in the future, I mean the idea that it's a diminishing thing, you've already got the benefit of the tax thing. So sorry that's Connecticut law.
Well, that's a little different for the 10 mil, but we don't have any of that here in town anymore. That was a little different, the way that was calculated, the penalties and so on. That was for timber. So those are the rules, and it is a tax incentive to help preserve land.
Don't see how that does it though. Anyway.
I think that gives us a lot of good information to bring to the full committee to, recommend that the planning commission put this into the POCD so that it can be fully adopted and utilized.
Okay.
I don't know about you.
So just to reiterate, my urgency to this is that we do have about a dozen parcels that for some reason have been classified as that. And in order to, I wouldn't be able to, at this point in time, approve any other owners if they came forward and wanted to do so. So we do need some criteria. We do need something passed, or the others will need to fall off.
What I can do is I will, Mike obviously runs the planning commission. I'll work with him to try to let him know that there is an urgency to it. Our referral either way, we should just do that in one committee meeting. I don't think we should kick this around because it's just a referral, and whether it's positive or negative, the planning commission will take their action as they need to. We're just kind of saying, hey, this is what we like. But I think the language, as Francine said, should be kind of the way it was originally. And that way we can now move that forward.
Thank you, Francine.
So I just have a question about next steps. So would we then say that we want to move this does it have to go to the full open space meeting, the next open space meeting, or can we just move this here?
I think the planning commission would enjoy a positive referral, whether we rush a meeting or not, just to have a referral that hey, we agree with the assessor's department that this is an urgent need, and we positively refer this statement, do with it. And I mean, they don't necessarily need our referral. It just helps. It just helps the process. I have to find out from Mike sorry about the background noise, but I've got to learn from Mike when he can get this onto the planning agenda.
But you mean a referral, that means just stepping stone onto the full open space, the next open space meeting, right?
Yeah, the next open space meeting would make the positive referral, the commission, and then planning will do with it as they need to. They're the ones who are going to vote on it and put it in the POCD for Francine, so it's done.
Okay, I didn't know if we, like us, could move it on, but I don't think so, because we're just like a subgroup.
Yeah, you'd have to have the committee make the referral.
Okay, just checking on all that.
All right. So thank you, Francine, for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And
I'm sorry about the delay in getting in.
I thought I had the right link, but I was patient. I'm like, well, maybe they're, ready behind or something.
Sorry
Thank you,
about that.
Francine.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. All right, back to the draft open space acquisition policy. So Susan, do you think if we just modified the first paragraph?
Well, so that's what I was thinking. We could take out some of that language out of the first paragraph and put in a more general kind of mission statement language, which I don't have my email pulled up and I didn't print it. I'm just looking for that now.
So I could share my screen. I've got it, I think. No, wait a minute, I have to download it.
Anyway, so my thought was we can, I tried to construct general language which encompassed what the 15 points were below, and just keep it general like that, and then have those specific points down there, and then we're not worrying about wordsmithing that intro paragraph.
So it was in your email, the language is in the email.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have the master document. So Susan, if you want me to send something over so you can delete stuff, that would be fine. Or if you just want to send me something and tell me what to edit out and put in, I can. It's either whatever's
that actually
easy.
might be the easiest way to do it, is if you want to, and I can send it back around with like track changes so everyone can see what I did, and then maybe we can just I think this will resolve whatever we were discussing at the last meeting, and then we could just put this on the agenda for the next meeting as well.
Sounds fine.
Does that sound like a reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we'll do that by email. And that's it. Those are the items.
Sorry, the only thing with for the document for track changes, instead of doing that, if you could do red strike through and blue font, it's just easier for when you add it to the packet.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll try and obey the rules. Sounds good. I hate these like documents that go around with track changes, and then God forbid you get more than one person making changes. It's like the base of my existence.
Yeah.
I think I did find the one word thing that I was, which I'm not even sure is correct. So back to the minutes, because I'm circling back to that tiny thing. So
Yes.
So in number 2, draft open space acquisition policy, stated that she feels like the current mission applies to those goals that are in the 15 goals that are below the criteria. And changing one word will make a difference. I don't know what that's referring to, but I think I was saying that the current mission should apply to the goals in the
We ended up changing that whole mission to goals thing.
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't even matter.
It's just to reference our little subcommittee.
Yeah.
I mean, because we had that as our mission is, and then we changed it to our goals are, because we already had a mission statement. So I think it's fine. I mean, this is all just reference.
Okay, it doesn't matter. That just seemed a little awkward. I wasn't sure what that was.
No one's taking us to court on this little little work group.
Yeah. So I know. I mean, the fact that we're like have our minutes and we're all recorded and everything. It's like, but I will try to. I'm going to have to run in like 2 minutes because I have a hard thing at 5:00. But I will try and do the red strike through and the blue on the document. that to me.
And Susan, I will email that to you tomorrow morning.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. All right. All right, good. Well, we've done everything on the list and we've done it in amazingly different order. But do we have a motion for adjournment? That's the last item on our. Susan, and I'll second. And then we'll vote. So thank you, everybody. See you at the next meeting.